To finish our second week of reflections, all based around prominent places in the story of the way that Jesus was born, we come to Egypt, which in turn brings us back to Nazareth. And so the story comes full circle. From the point where the angel appears to Mary in Nazareth, explaining that she's going to have a virgin birth and she's going to name the baby Jesus and who Jesus is going to be. The same setting for Joseph getting his head around the fact that his future wife is already pregnant with the Son of God. From there we go to Bethlehem. Babylon is kind of involved because of the Magi that come from the east. That leads to fleeing to Egypt to escape evil King Herod. And from Egypt, once King Herod has finally died, we come back to Nazareth again. So Egypt is this prominent place that appears throughout the Bible story. In the earlier stories in Genesis, Egypt is the world's greatest power. It's also a place of refuge to start with, because when famine hits Canaan, then Isaac's family, Isaac's nickname was Israel. This is where the 12 tribes of Israel come from, Isaac's children and their descendants. Egypt is the place where the second youngest brother and Isaac's favourite son, Joseph, ends up being. And through that strange set of circumstances, as his jealous brothers sell him into slavery, Joseph is able to use his gifts of interpreting dreams to find a prominent place within the Egyptian court. But it's also a place where it's his character and his work ethic and everything that is godly in him is seen by everybody around him. He ends up in a position of power, and this is the way that his extended family are saved from the famine in the end. It's reminiscent of the way that the prophets Daniel and Ezekiel are raised to high positions in the Babylonian court when they are in exile hundreds of years later, in the story of the way that Babylon takes over from Egypt as being the greatest power in the world. So in the era of the kings of Israel, it's Babylon that you look to in the opposite direction from Egypt. Babylon is taken over by Assyria, and then between the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Greek Empire arises and falls and is overtaken by the Roman Empire, which is what's in place in Jesus' time. So this set of amazing world powers always represent world's wisdom, what the world thinks is important, what the history books say about important nations. And it's interesting how the people of Israel always seem to end up being associated with these nations, but as slaves or servants, and yet these prominent people always rise up, those who truly follow God and who exhibit godly character. So from the good beginning of this family of what we would now call the people of Israel being welcomed into Egypt, over the years that they become a slave people, and the Pharaoh in Egypt does the terrible thing of slaughtering Israelite babies to reduce the number of people because they're flourishing and becoming too numerous, and Moses is miraculously saved from that fate and ends up in a prominent position. The mirroring of what happens to Moses in the life of Jesus is very deliberate. I want to say that later Egypt continues to play a role. So the story of slavery and freedom and the image of redemption that God, through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ later in his life, sets us free from our slavery to sin and everything that is dark and wrong in the world. And that's where we get the wonderful word redemption from. In the same way that God set the people of Israel free from slavery in Egypt, we are set free personally from slavery today. And it becomes an image of what Jesus did for us on the cross. During King Solomon's time, when there was peace and prosperity in Israel, then Egypt is used as the example of God showing favour by the fact that it's still this great and powerful nation, and they live at peace with each other and receive gifts from Egypt. Later, when God's judgment comes and the people are taken into exile in Babylon, Egypt has this strange role of being the place of people's disobedience. So once Jerusalem has been destroyed and the temple and people taken into exile in Babylon, there are still poor, ordinary Israelite people that are left in Israel. And God says to them, I've had enough of the doom and destruction. Live in the houses of those who are wealthy that have been taken into Babylon. Live off their fields and their vineyards, and I will protect you and prosper you here. But they did not trust God, despite the prophets telling them to stay. They went to Egypt, where they were in some ways looked after, but God's warning was, Egypt will be no haven for you, because the Babylonians and then the Assyrians are going to come and invade Egypt, and you will get caught up in that. If you won't listen to me, things will go badly for you. So Egypt continues to have this prominent place. But the biggest thing for the Christmas story is for us to understand that in the same way that Bethlehem connects Jesus to the story of King David, so Egypt connects Jesus to the story of Moses and freedom and redemption. And leads to an interesting question if you take the analogy. Does this mean that because God's son comes out of Egypt, like Moses did, he goes to a place called Nazareth, this small place with a bad reputation up north, sort of unimportant. Is Nazareth the promised land? So it's important for us to understand that Jesus' story resonates with Moses and leading the people to redemption, and also being saved from an evil king, in the same way that the association with Bethlehem and King David leads us to think through the idea that Jesus was going to become the Good Shepherd, who is also the King of the universe. All of these point towards Jesus' identity. And in answer to the question about Nazareth and the Promised Land, well, there's a question that somebody asks later, having seen the amazing person that Jesus is and beginning to suspect, is this the Son of God, the Messiah? The phrase is this: can anything good come out of Nazareth? And the answer is yes. Mary, wonderful, faithful servant of God, who doesn't think about the disgrace or the difficulty of what God is asking her to do that people will not understand and may judge her for. Joseph, who with one dream and an explanation from an angel trusts that what Mary tells him might be fantastic, but it is also true, that she's a virgin who's going to give birth to the Son of God, and then becomes father, dad to Jesus here on earth. And most of all, of course, out of Nazareth comes Jesus Christ, the Saviour of the world, because this is the way that God chooses to do things.